Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica and our When I Feel Like It series, Retro Revamp Rewind, where I take a look at some of the games that I featured on my channel in the early days and talk about them again because I love them that much. And today we're taking a look at Splatterhouse, the arcade original. When I first showed this game, I did it on the FM Towns Marty, and that's the best physical copy you can get as far as accuracy is concerned. The game has been released on stuff like the 360 and PlayStation 3 with an arcade perfect port, but if you're talking physical copies, the Towns version takes the cake. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we have a Patreon link in the description below as well. But I've always loved Splatterhouse. I fell in love with this franchise when I first saw this game in arcades way back in the day. It was, I think, Great Escape in New York. It was like a Six Flags theme park, and they had a Splatterhouse cabinet in the back of the arcade there. Since I don't love roller coasters, I was way more interested in the arcade experience. And this is an absolutely iconic arcade beat-em-up. I would have loved to own a copy of this PCB, but I will tell you, it's a $1,000 item at this point in time, and while I love the game, there's other things that I might buy first for that $1,000. But as far as Splatterhouse is concerned, this was an iconic series in the 90s, and it's fallen out of favor a little bit, unfortunately. The remake on the 360 and PlayStation 3 is fun, but it's definitely not as good as the original, because I remember as a kid, probably too young to play this, when I first saw all the graphic content and gore and horror that Splatterhouse brought to the table, I was 100% hooked. And I always thought it was weird that Splatterhouse 2 and 3 came to the Genesis, but the original game never did. I just thought that was odd. You can see here, you can cheese this first boss. I wasn't over far enough to the right in the first instance, but I still remember how to beat this boss without taking a hit all this time after playing the game on the original arcade board. I just think I found it back then, or maybe I read about it. Who knows? My memory of that long ago is not great, but I just love this. The game is just so unique and interesting, and outside of the Towns version, the arcade is the only one where you get this door exploding in on itself. Splatterhouse is just a fun and unique game, and it feels like it comes from a different time. This was gore for gore's sake, but they also wanted to put a great beat-em-up experience around the game. What I really love about Splatterhouse 2, outside of the visuals and just the overall tone and horror vibe, is just how slow-paced of a game this actually is. It's not something like Streets of Rage or Final Fight where you're just constantly throwing punches. As Rick here with the terror mask on, you really need to think about how you move when you swing and when you don't swing, because timing is such a huge mechanic in this game. If you get off cadence, if you get yourself into a bad spot, you're going to start taking hits and getting juggled, and you are going to die. This is a slower pace thinking man's beat 'em up, for lack of a better term, and I've always really enjoyed that. Now, as far as Splatterhouse games 1, 2, and 3 are concerned, I would say Splatterhouse 2 on the Genesis is my favorite, followed by this one, and Splatterhouse 3 coming in a very, very close third. And again, like I mentioned earlier, with the slower paced movement, here we just have to hit a few enemies with that 2x4 into the wall while we avoid these spike balls. But you really have to think about your timing. One wrong jump and you're taking damage. And because this game is very unforgiving, you do not want to take too much damage, or else you will put yourself into a situation where you are totally screwed. And you want to bring enough life into the boss fights because they are quite difficult and also very unique. The second boss fight is just a room filled with haunted furniture, but the way the furniture moves around is really the difficult part, and that's what I mean about cadence and understanding Splatterhouse. You really need to learn the patterns of what's going on, because this chair is going to jump, it's going to move at a different pace, it'll be faster and slower, higher and lower as it jumps around. It can be quite difficult. Sometimes the game will give you an easier version, like there is some RNG involved, but even punching these knives, you really have to keep your distance or else you're totally going to get hurt. Now granted, punching a knife in real life would probably hurt you, I don't advise it, but apparently Rick has the moves to be able to do that. But as good as this game looks, and as great as this game plays, the soundtrack is spectacular, has this really weird dissonant audio to it, so go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds and I'll come back and tell you more why Splatterhouse is one of my favorite arcade beat-em-ups of all time. There's just something about the soundtrack and the sound effects that are really disconcerting. I don't know if it's just the weird tones or notes that they're using, or how they have this really high pitch to them as well as this bassiness, but it really sells the whole story of this being a horror game, and I love that you just punch birds clean out of the air and turn them into a pile of goo. This is just an iconic game, and it's one that I feel like, since it is so old, maybe not as many people as I would think have ever played it. So leave me a comment down below and tell me if you played Splatterhouse either back in the day or more recently. But I love how iconic this game is too, and it is nails hard, but man with sack over his head with shotguns? Resident Evil? No, Splatterhouse. They got there first. I don't know if the bag zombie in Resident Evil 4 was inspired by Splatterhouse, but it feels like it. But I love the unique weapons as well. This is the only area in the game where you're going to get these harpoons and you can throw them clean through your enemy. But you'll see there, like I mentioned, cadence is king. If you miss one shot, suddenly you're going to take 2 hits of damage. I missed that harpoon, and then I got myself into a bad spot, and I instantaneously died. If you play this game well, if you memorize everything, you could basically not get hit. If you practice it, it's not that hard. But having not played this for a few years, I don't remember everything going on. But I also love how this game plays with suspense, because right now we're just walking down a hallway and a mirror Rick is going to come out and try to attack you. You beat the first one, but now the question is, every mirror you pass by puts you on edge a little bit. Is Mirror Rick going to come out and try to hit you? Is this going to be a safe mirror? You already know it's coming. It's slow paced and it's letting you sit here, and there he is. You're never sure when he's going to come out. The best part about this game, though, I think, is some of the iconography, and if you do play this game, I highly recommend the Japanese version, because in the North American version, this cross right here is going to be censored. And of course, this came out on the PC Engine, but it is an inferior port compared to the arcade original or the FM Towns version. I'll leave a link to the FM Towns version video I did a long time ago down below. The commentary is not great, so don't judge me on that. It was like 3 years ago at this point. But playing the Japanese version, you get that cross. But you'll see there they gave you an axe, and if you bend down and get it, you put yourself in danger. And this, I think, is the funniest part of the game. We're beating chairs with a lumber. It'd be like the equivalent of ripping your arm off and beating another human being with it. You're just basically using the material they're made out of to also kill them. It's just a fun little room with this library here and those chairs jumping around that we saw earlier. Now, my only complaint with Splatterhouse is sometimes the controls can be a little touchy in certain areas. Right here, you have these hands jumping up at you, and I like that they even use their finger to tell you to come closer, but you never know when they're going to jump, and the minute you're on that slope, your control changes. It gets faster and it gets slidier. This is almost requiring perfect input, and it is a very hard spot in the game. So if I had to lodge one complaint, it would be that. But short of that one control issue in that one level, this is a pure 10 out of 10 game in my opinion. It plays incredibly well. It looks spectacular, especially for its era. The soundtrack is so unique and horror-filled that you just want to play it more. I just wish that a PCB wasn't so incredibly expensive, because I do want to add this to my collection. Like I said, I've got that FM Towns Marty copy, but it's just not as good as the arcade board. But weirdly, it's about as valuable now, so maybe I could just do a little one-to-one trade with somebody. But that's Splatterhouse. It's just a legendary arcade game. This was from the earlier days of arcades, when your home consoles didn't look anything like the arcade experience, and this is just a game I know and love and remember as a kid. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and you can see here towards the last level, it gets incredibly hard. Short of that, if you could do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, or ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. If you don't, I'm going to pop out of the ground and try to swipe you with my hand. But yeah, Splatterhouse, leave me a comment down below. Tell me what you think. I'm going to die very quickly to this boss because he is nails hard. See you next time. Bye-bye.